Well, hey, Miss Amelia.
Well, hey, Miss Sydney, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm
Good.
excited to listen and chat, more so maybe listen to this topic that we're talking about today.
I know. We'll see what we talk about in this one. We're in part 7 of our Navigating Life in the Middle series. And today we're going to be talking about surrendering control, trusting God's timing in a timeline obsessed world. I know, heavy stuff today. So, in a world that places pressure on hitting milestones by a certain age, today we will be talking about focusing on letting go of societal expectations and embracing God's unique timing for each of our journeys. So, this is going to be a grand topic today.
Welcome to No More Sunday Scaries, a podcast for women navigating the chaos of life, love, and work, all while keeping Jesus at the center.
If you're in the middle and figuring out what's next, this is your safe space to laugh, learn, and lean into God's plan for your life.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Sydney. Together, we're here to unpack those difficult questions, tackle the what am I doing with my life moments, and remind you that you're never alone in this journey.
So grab your coffee and let's kick those Sunday scaries to the curb.
Because with faith, community, and a little bit of fun, the work week doesn't have to be so scary. Let's dive in. Miss Amelia, can you start us off maybe talking about a situation where you have struggled with surrendering control of any situation that you're in and feeling like, man, God, are you sure? Like, why am I in this season of waiting? Or what am I doing? Things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, as the self-proclaimed mayor of Middletown, uh, I definitely have had some experience of things not happening in my timeline. I won't spend too much time on this because I feel like I've talked about this with every episode, but I'm just going to be real with you. One thing that I have struggled with timeline is marriage.
Mm.
Because as we know, I'm 35 years old, and if 20-year-old me were to see myself now, I'm like, you old grandma, you're 35 and you're still not married. That's not a part of our plan. And so I think about, we have this timeline of go to college, get married, have kids. And
Yeah.
my timeline isn't working out that way. And I don't want to say a piece, but like
Yeah.
a piece of me does have a piece about it. And I've talked to you about this before of when it does happen, like I know there's a reason why there is a wait. It's tough to not be on the other side of that. But I do know when it works out, I'm going to be so grateful that it worked out the way that it did,
Yeah.
you know. And so that is one thing that, like, obviously my timeline hasn't matched up. So that's something that I'm currently struggling with of like, I don't know how it's going to work out, but I know it's going to be for good. But I also want to share an experience where my timeline didn't match up. And
Mhm.
now I'm so grateful. And it may seem like a trivial thing, but it's important to me. And it goes into sharing our journeys. And
Mhm.
we were just before the call or before we started this, we were just chatting about like grad school and all of that. And so it made
Mhm.
me think. I graduated, I took a couple years off working full time, and then I went back to grad school. So let's say there were 3 years between, not let's say it was, there were 3 years. This is a real story. 3 years between undergrad and grad. And I struggled coming back to grad school because I felt like I was so much older
Mhm.
than the people I was in my program with. I was only 3 years older, but I had like gone from working 40 hours to 20 hours. And it was just a different experience. But I just struggled with that because I was like, I messed my timeline up. Like I'm 3 years behind. If I would have just kept going like all these other people, I wouldn't be again 3 years behind. And I just struggled with that so much. But then a couple months in, I realized I just went from working a full time job that was 40 hours. Now I'm working 20 hours. It's still hard work, but like I just cut my time in half. I maybe also cut my salary in half, but I cut my time in half. So then I was like, you know what? You need to appreciate that, like, it probably doesn't feel as overwhelming to you now, Emily, because you, like, if you would have come straight from undergrad, this would have been overwhelming. But because you went from 40 hours to 20 hours, it's way more manageable. And then two, I remember like I took different roles because I had better time management than I would have had. Or like people would, I don't want to say like look to me as a leader, but like I was more comfortable speaking
Mm.
because again, like I felt, because 3 years isn't a big deal, but from like 23 to 26, 27, it is kind of a bigger, like you feel like, well, I've actually lived, working a full time job. It's just
Right.
different. And so I just felt like I took more of a mom role with the group.
Mhm.
And as we've talked about before, that's just naturally where I gravitate. And so I think it helped me gain confidence.
Yeah.
And so then I started to shift of like, well, maybe this is how it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then when I have continued on and I noticed some of my peers struggling with balance, working after hours and all of that. I didn't struggle with that because I worked 3 years where I clocked in and clocked out and I couldn't work
Yeah.
outside because it was like medical billing and HIPAA and all that. And
Yeah.
so it was like that job that I felt like was pointless because my corporate job, because it didn't have anything to do with my undergrad or grad, it was teaching me boundaries. It was teaching me what it's like to work in a place where you clock in and clock out and you don't really feel like you're moving the needle in your life or contributing to anything. I needed that to be a part of my path because I got away from education and I've come back. I appreciate it so much more. If I ever think, "Oh, what if I stepped into the corporate world?" I'm like, girl, you did that. And the fact that you only get 7 days off, and in higher ed, you get a week here, week there, day here, day here. It's just so many things I would have taken for granted. And so that was one minute. Again, I don't want to diminish it, but like that wasn't groundbreaking. But for me, it felt like my timeline is so off. I'm so
Yeah.
behind, where it's like now it doesn't matter that there was a 3 year break because I'm able to talk about experience and different things. And so just to share one time when it did work out and one time where um still waiting and
Yeah.
hoping to see that. And so like but with that, that's kind of like an everyday, you got to surrender that control. And so God, that's my experience. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've got an example or maybe something that you're currently working through when it comes
Yeah.
to surrendering that control.
Yeah. Let's see. There I feel like there has been many instances where I have just had to be like, just gonna let go and let God. There's been, especially in my professional career. So for me, I've kind of explained this story before, but when I graduated undergrad, COVID hit and everyone was on a hiring freeze and all the things. So I just like, I couldn't find a job or anything like that. And so then I went to my master's program, got my master's while I was trying to figure all of that out. Well, I was in my master's about to graduate. I was applying to jobs in my field, and it just seemed like everyone was like, we need 3 to 5 years experience or, 5 to 7 years experience. And it's like entry level work. And it's like, really? Like, what? And it was getting really frustrating, and it was getting to the point where, yes, I didn't have maybe all of that experience, but I was like, I've got to just apply to see. Well, of course, I was getting no after no after no. And that happened for probably like close to a year of just like applying and just getting rejected. And I was just like, what is wrong with me? Like, I was literally going to my mom, who's worked in HR for so long, and I was like, girl, like, I need you to like practice interview questions with me and things like that, because I have no idea like what I'm doing wrong, to the point where I'm not even in most cases I wasn't even getting the initial interview. And so it was like me like researching like how to battle the resume algorithm and things like that that a lot of companies like use to thin out their search. So it was just getting like very time consuming and very just like emotionally, physically, mentally exhausting, because it was like, what am I doing wrong? And so then I just eventually had to literally just like let go of it and just whatever happened, happened. And now I'm in my current role now. And so that's helped me out so much. And to the point where, you know, I've gained a lot of skills and things like that. But it's also like that struggle of, you know, trying to find a job taught me a season of patience, taught me a season of trusting in the Lord during that time and leaning on him during that time. And I think I've stated this before, but there's been a time where, you know, there's been multiple prayers where I literally am like, I need patience. That is the fruit of the spirit that I like need to work on. And Lord, just give me patience. And when you ask, like, you shall receive. And so he has given me so many situations where I need patience, and it's so hard. But I'm like, I know that that situation of just surrendering control gave me a new skill set in that specific fruit of the spirit that I could almost add to my Christian resume of like, I have now have this many years experience in patience. Yeah, it was just that was definitely a struggle for sure, because I was losing all hope. And it was just kind of like a like low confidence, low self-esteem, because you felt like people weren't seeing your worth and didn't really care enough to learn about your skill set and things like that. And I'm like, if they would just talk to me, like I I know I can do this job. So that was definitely a struggle. And then also like my dating life, honestly, like I never had a boyfriend before I met my husband. So I went through literally high school, my basically all the way up until like my final semester of college in my undergrad, and then that's when I met Dakota. But yeah, it was definitely that part of, you know, being lonely in those younger years and feeling like no one really like appreciated you or, you know, liked you. And when you're younger, you're just like, you know, I want to be pursued. I want to be um looked at like my friends get looked at, you know, from their boyfriends and things like that, or you know, how guys go up and talk to them and things like that. So that never really happened to me until I met Dakota. And so it's like I'm going to your point, Emily, of like, you know, it's a season of waiting now, but you know that it's going to pay off in the end, and it really does. Like it is rewarding in the end with any situation. It's not doesn't have to necessarily be marriage. It doesn't have to necessarily be, you know, the job or anything like that, but like just that surrendering control and knowing that his plan is far greater than our own, it pays off so much more than our own plan. And so it's like, because I feel like our own plans they might work out for a short period of time, but it's like his plan is gonna be everlasting, you know, even beyond death and things like that. Like we will be up there with him and it for eternity. And so it's like it's kind of hard sometimes being on this side of the of his plan of just like, when is it gonna happen for me kind of thing. But it does get better. And I think that's it kind of it also like just sounds really redundant to say that, or you know, kind of annoying to say that, but it is true. Like it will get better in the end. And that again goes for any situation, that once you surrender that control, it pays off. And then you learn so much in it, and you've become your character. You've definitely had character building. You've definitely had strength in working through it, and in the end that you can do hard things. It just takes some time for certain things, but yeah, there's definitely been multiple situations in my life where I feel like I have definitely had to just surrender control and like let it go, and know, especially now too, like with my husband's match process, like it's just surrendering control, wherever Dakota matches, hopefully he matches. That's where the Lord wants us to go. And this is very much a situation where you can't have control in, because you're putting your faith basically in an algorithm. And so it's definitely like a big trust process. But I will say that that's one process that we have just had to like literally surrender that control and like let it go, and just pray about the situation, and give it to him, because you can definitely get caught up all in it and let it stress you out and let it cause you anxiety, and you know almost give you like task paralysis, because yeah, it can really be daunting and heavy. And so yeah, I feel like there's been a few common interests, or situations where I feel like I've had to surrender that control and just move forward and know that he's got it.
You
Yeah.
were saying so many good things. I had to
Yeah.
start taking notes. I was like, okay, yes, no, yeah. And so, I'm like, no, I gotta start taking, because like,
Yeah.
honestly, every topic you were saying, I was like, same.
Yeah.
And when you said something about like character development, it made me think like I saw something that was like, do it for the plot. And I
Yes.
think about this of like control. Think about like when you first watch a movie,
Mm-hmm.
and like, I'm always going to compare rom coms because who doesn't love a rom com?
No, literally.
Right. If you're a Sunday Scaries girly, you love a rom com.
You love a rom-com.
Right. And so it makes me think of like when you're first watching the movie, if it's a rom com, like they're going to end up in the end. But there is a moment where like you don't know.
Yeah.
Like they're going to end up, but how is it going to, like, how is he going to apologize? Is she going to apologize? There's going to be a miscommunication. Like, how is it going to work out? And when you don't know, and, maybe something as the listener or watcher, you're like, he's a prince. Like it. And
Yeah.
honestly, in real life, if the miscommunication is, oops, I'm a prince, I don't hate it.
I'll take it.
I mean, maybe don't lie to me in the future by omission, but like if you're a prince, we can work it out. Anyway, but something's going to happen, but you don't know.
Yeah.
And that's how we're living our life. We hope that this all works out and it's hearts and stars and we ride off into the sunset, but we don't know. But then think about those times when you're rewatching it and you're like, girl, he's going to come around, or like, girl, we got to work through this miscommunication and just talk to each other. Like, God is the one who's seen the movie and he knows. And he's like, girl, just wait. Like,
Yeah.
if you only knew what's going to come in. And the thing is, it's not always going to be maybe how we anticipate.
Yeah.
It's not meaning like he knows, what you wish. He's not a genie.
Mm-hmm.
What you wish for, you're going to get. But like, he can see it and he's like, girl, just wait. But like,
Yeah.
I've got to develop you, because if I give this to you now, it's not going to hit the same. Like, you're
Right.
patient. Like, I'm like helping you develop patience, because then when you get this thing that you're wanting, you're going to need that patience that you didn't have when you first wanted it.
Right.
Or your patience is going to be tested, and it needs to play out in a couple years when you actually get that thing that you were hoping for than when you first got it.
Right.
And so it just makes me think of that. And then I wrote down Evan Almighty.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever seen Evan Almighty, it's got like Steve Carell and Morgan Freeman, and it's where like he is told to build an ark.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that movie?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's in the moment where Morgan Freeman is talking to Lorelai Gilmore, the actress that plays Lorelai Gilmore, and she's like questioning, why us, and he says, well, if someone prays for courage, do you think God gives them courage, or God gives you an opportunity to exhibit courage?
Mm.
And she's like, you are God. Oh my gosh. Well, and I think he uses some other examples, but I
Yeah.
always go back to that of like, if you are saying, God, give me a way, we talked about, I think, leadership last week.
Yeah.
Give me an opportunity to lead. He's not going to be like, poof, now you've got all this confidence. You know everything about everything. He's like, no, I'm going to give you this speaking opportunity to gain that experience.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you in front of these people who ask you to lead. Like, you've got to build that. If he just
Yeah.
gives you courage, you don't know what it took to get there. It's just like if you're like, God, make me a millionaire, and you get the money and you waste it. It's like, well, you didn't know what it's like to build that. You've got to build that on your own. So I love that. Like, God is building us to, there's something working in us that we're going to appreciate on the other side. And when you're in the middle of something, it's hard to see. You're like, what is it?
Yeah.
I know I'm learning something, but what is it, God? And he's like, you'll see. And that you mentioned something about like when you're in the middle of it, you think of times of when other things have worked out. Because I think that's kind of what keeps me going of like when I'm in the middle of something, he reminds me, oh, remember that time when you wanted it to go this way and it didn't and it was actually better?
Yeah.
I'm like, you right. Or it did. And he's like, I had you then. Why would I not have you now? And
Right.
I had a Bible study teacher who she would always tell us, you need to write down when prayers are answered. Like you need, like when, and write down your prayers too. But she's like, when God answers a prayer, you need to have a journal where you write it down and you put like the date by it.
Yeah.
Because then, and maybe she was even saying like, talk about when you pray about it and then go back and say when it's answered. Because when you're in that season of waiting, or when you're in that season of like, I cannot give up control, you go back and you're reminded, oh my gosh, that prayer was answered.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that prayer was not answered. Thank goodness it did not
Yeah.
work out that way, because we're in our lives so we can forget when things worked out or when things didn't work out. So I always love that she was like, you need to write down when he answers your prayers or when things
Yeah.
kind of come to completion. And then the last thing I thought about when you were talking is when we were talking about this timeline obsessed world, I had a friend that said comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And because nowhere in the Bible does it say when you're 25, you got to get married. And if you haven't had kids by 30, good luck, or if you're not married by 35, God bless you, sweetheart. It doesn't, thank goodness, it
I
doesn't
just
say
picture
that.
the old Baptist folk being like, "Oh, you don't have any
Bless her
kids
heart.
yet?" No, literally.
Right. Bless her heart. I got my grandson. Maybe he could take you out. Yeah.
Your
She's
grandson's 12. Ain't no way.
right. She's just so sweet. She can't find a man. Bless her heart. Bless her little heart. That's what I imagine. Yes. But uh again, there is no timeline in the Bible. So that
Yeah.
comparison, and it's even amplified more because I don't have to wait and hang out with you and talk to you to compare myself to you.
Yeah.
I can pull up in a minute. Like I don't have to
Yes.
wait to gab with my high school friends. It's like I can see them. I can see them in a second, and I can just, again, I see their highlight reel. I
Yeah.
don't see, and I think maybe you said that a couple of episodes ago, like
Mhm.
I'm not seeing, maybe this, like if they're announcing that they're having a kid, I don't know if there was a struggle to have a kid. Or
Right.
like if someone's getting married, I don't know their struggle to do that. Or like, if it's like a divorce, that could be an answered prayer. So there's
Yeah.
just comparison is what gets us where we think there's this timeline. And I
Right.
do understand there are certain ticking timelines
Yeah.
to certain things. I do understand
Yeah.
biologically there are certain things. I don't know. Sarah wasn't she like 90?
Yeah. And it happened for her. It can happen for anyone.
Yeah, I feel like that's the obviously other stuff happened, but it's always like, well, you remember Sarah and Abraham, like they were
Yeah.
old, and so it's like you've always got that to go to, and I understand that there are other factors to that,
Mm.
but it's just tough when you see other people's timeline
Right.
and you see, maybe their timeline matches yours, and you're like, gosh, where it's like, we shouldn't be competing with others,
Right.
but it's
Yeah.
tough because that's just
It
how
is
it's set
tough.
up.
Yeah, because it's always presented to you on social media. And so it's hard not to just be like, oh man, I wish I was living in, I wish, I had a husband and we were building a house, or I got a new car, or anything like that. And it's like, yeah, but like sometimes in reality, it's like, well, we know we can't take those items to heaven, number one. Number two, who knows, yeah, they're building a house, but like, who knows what the relationship looks like? Maybe it's like this is building the house is like a distracting point, or, anything like that. And so it's kind of like there's always this picturesque version of like what society says life should look like. And it's like, we don't live by society's rules and guidelines. We live by what's presented in the book of life in the Bible. And so I feel like sometimes it is hard not to get caught up. And it's easy to say, like, oh, don't just get caught up in, social media and things like that. It's easy to say that. And, those who say that, like, you're lying, because I know you probably get caught up in it too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you just have to take, if you are scrolling, like, you have to take everything with a grain of salt, because again, you don't know what's going on. That's just 30 seconds of their life. You don't know what's going on, way past. So it's like I would rather just surrender control and let him have it than me just sit on the couch feeling worse about myself because I'm not getting, a 30 under 30 on the Forbes list, or, anything like that. So it's like there's different things that I feel like you just have to just know that in the end it's going to be worth it again, and it's going to be the best thing. Because yeah, sometimes I even feel like I'm behind on my life. Like, we should be popping out a kid, and I'm like, no way, no how, not today, not today. Pass me by, Lord,
Right.
not today. Just because I'm like, I Dakota and I are at a point in our relationship where it's like we don't feel like we could give our all to a whole nother life. And so it's like we want to make sure, obviously, like, I feel like there's sometimes where people just aren't ready, and the Lord will equip you and things like that. But there's sometimes where it's like it would just, whenever obviously the Lord wants us to pop out a kid, but I don't want to do it just because I feel like I'm
Have
behind.
to.
Yeah, on, because then it's like, what am I bringing this child into the world, and what am I like starting that foundation on?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, if I'm starting that foundation on because society said I needed to have a kid, then what is my relationship going to look like with this child? and things like that. Like, I want it to be from God. Obviously, all life is from God, but I want it to be like, this is the time, and this is founded on the Lord, and this is like, you gotta go, girl, because they here. But yeah, I feel like sometimes we can get caught up in what society is telling us we need to do, and it just, you can't live life like that, because again, it might be good in the moment, but then later on, because you've set that foundation on what society says, it's kind of like the building your house on sand, or like actually on like a firm foundation. The man who builds his house on sand is a fool, but the man who builds his house on the solid rock is the house will stand, right? And so it's kind of like, I would rather build my house on a solid rock than sand. And I feel like sand is what society is, and the solid rock is obviously our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And so, like, you building your house on sand, or anyone building their house on sand, it's not going to last long. And it's not going to withhold that storm that comes, whether it be maybe, you lose your job, or you're grieving, or, you're in that stage of waiting, or anything like that. If you're building your plan on sand, then it's not going to work. But if you're building your plan and building your plan with Him, and making sure that He is in the center of that plan, and it's ultimately His plan, then you're going to go further than you just building it on what society's saying.
That's truly what it is, of like,
Yeah.
that building on sand is sometimes that instant gratification
Yeah.
can be fleeting,
Yeah.
because I think we could all, to some extent, fulfill society's timeline.
Right.
I could be married right now, but am I just going to go out and marry someone and be unhappy? You could pop out. And I say this of like, I get
Yeah.
that there's maybe some other stuff. It'd probably be easier for me to get married than for you to have a
Right.
kid. Like, it's going to take a little bit longer. But like,
Right.
you could have a kid right now, but if you're doing that to appease the timeline or your Facebook friends,
Right.
while it's cool to put a picture of the announcement, they're not going to, where your Facebook friend's going to be at 2 a.m. when it's crying, and, you're moving and Dakota's at the hospital. Like,
Right.
and you're figuring out moving, like,
Yeah.
this may not, I mean, I know there's never a good time. Always there's going to be something that's happening going
Right.
on, but like, it's like, they're not always going to be there. And so, like, is
Yeah.
there that resentment of like, I'm just doing this because I think I'm supposed to do it?
Right.
Can always be the underlying thing, where it's like, when you wait for God's timing, again, you don't get that instant gratification. The delayed gratification is sometimes better, because you're having to work for it. It's on your own time, it's on God's time. And
Right.
so I like that, of like, if you're building it on sand, which is society, because things grow and change,
Yeah.
like, just different things can happen. And so I think, like, we could follow the timeline,
Yeah.
but again, we don't just do that for appearances. Like, I want to be happy, I want it to be right. So I like that comparison.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. We just got to have faith the size of a mustard seed, and just surrender that control. And I know
Yeah.
that is, again, easy to say. It is
Yeah.
very easy to say, but
Because, too, when it boils down, this is the struggle. Faith typically, like, yes, you may have faith, like, I'm going to release control, but you do have to have some action in your life. And it's
yeah,
hard to have that line of like, where does my action separate from God? Meaning,
yeah,
you're like, I'm going to surrender all control of all my control, meaning like, I'm going to sit here forever and God's going to provide my
Yeah.
food and God's going to
Right.
provide me with friends. Where it's like, well, you got to go make money to get food.
Right.
And like,
Yeah.
well, you got to go hang out and talk to people to have friends. Well, you got, like, there has to be
Some
some
effort.
action. And so
Yeah.
that's where it's tough to be like, well, where does my action and his action, like, how much is too
Yeah.
much of me and how much is not enough of me? So I think that's always where I've kind of struggled. I'm ready, God, but like, do I go left or right? And
Right.
really, he's like, pick one and trust me the whole way. Like,
Yeah.
there isn't, now obviously you are, could be put into a position where there is a wrong decision, but so,
Yeah.
like, I was, should I do drugs or should I have a, so should I read my book? Like, he's like, girl, you
Be
know what?
so for real.
Right, right. But sometimes if you're like at a crossroad of like, well, should I get this house or should I get this house?
Yeah.
Which one do you want, God? It's like, yes, I think you should pray about it, but it's like, well, just make a decision
Yeah.
and worship me in the house. Have community in that house. Have
Yeah.
a good spirit in that. But
Yeah.
if you get the house and you're like, I don't know if this is it. I hate it here. So it's like sometimes it's not whether you should go left or right. Just pick a thing and just
Yeah.
trust him. And again, I'm not saying this because I do that, because I sit there at the crossroads.
Yeah.
God, if you just would tell me, give me a signal if it's left or right. And he's like, I've said right 50 times, but you won't listen.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where it is tough of when it comes to surrender control. It
Yeah.
is that having faith, but also you've got to take some action on it.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's, as humans, it's hard not to
Yes.
release
Yeah.
that control.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. 'Cause it's like, what do you do? Like, do you just do nothing? Like, do you just wait it out? Like, do you just, you know, but yeah, I would agree. Like, I think you just have to keep trucking along, and it'll come. It'll come when it's time for things to happen, for sure. But yeah, I would agree. I don't think you just sit there and do nothing. I think you do have to keep living life and keep trying to make a difference, because while you're in that season of not feeling like you're not doing anything or feeling like nothing's happening for you, you're learning something in that season, and you're still building your character and having that personal development during that time that you're waiting for whatever, or you're thinking about changing jobs or doing anything like that. You are learning about those certain situations, or you're gaining character while you're doing that. So while it feels like you're not doing much, or you're just kind of feeling like you might be stuck or sitting at those crossroads or anything like that, the Lord's still working on you, and the Lord's still chipping away at your heart and your mind, and helping you see and opening up your heart to what he's trying to grow you into becoming. So yeah, I think that was a really good conversation. I
Yeah.
think we had really good, I hope we had good insight for, someone out there to really take into consideration, and hopefully gain some encouragement too during this season of waiting, or, just questioning and things like that. And you're able to surrender that control. But in the meantime, while we're surrendering that control, Miss Amelia, how are you protecting yourself against those Sunday scaries, girl?
Oh yeah, I'm excited about this one. So this week, and honestly, it's been the past couple weeks, I have been glued to the investigative journalist of Candace Owens. She's following, like, she's doing a lot of pop culture. So if you've ever heard of Candace Owens, she's a
Mhm,
podcaster. She is a lot in the political realm of things and
mhm,
talks about stuff. But what I've been enjoying is she's been going into the, like, Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni stuff. I'm
mhm.
not here to us to talk about that,
Yeah,
but it's just like she's my age, and so I feel like it's like a friend, like hearing my friend like talk to my friend, so it gives me motivation because I'll listen to it like with my AirPods, and I'm cleaning, and I'm like, oh yeah, and then I'm like cleaning over here. It just gives me more motivation to like do stuff because I'm not actually like watching. And
mhm.
so I've just been following along to pop culture things that she's been talking about, and it's funny because she's like sometimes can be like petty and just like true millennial fashion. I love it.
Yeah,
I'm just like, give me all the tea because I'm not reading through all the lawsuits and documents. I need somebody to like sum it up for me and just
yeah,
give me so. And it's just funny to see people on TikTok also because like I mentioned, she is like more in the political realm and she's a conservative, but you go on TikTok or more conservative things,
mhm.
you go on TikTok and you see like people are like, I'm on the left, I'm a liberal, but I'm tuned into what she's talking about because this drama is just so good. So it's just
Yeah,
cool to see people like come together on a pop culture thing and
yeah,
then to just listen. So it's like it's fun to get plugged into to different like have your because I've got my Christian podcast, but then too to
yeah,
have my pop culture
yeah,
podcast. I feel like I've been a lot more productive in listening to that. So that's what
yeah.
I have been doing. What have you been into?
Oh my. I have really just been honestly like hanging out with Dakota and Copper during these last few moments of, I don't even know if you want to call it sanity because Lord have mercy. But yeah, I've really just been hanging out with Dakota and Copper, and it's really been nice because we just literally will chill on the couch. And actually, Dakota and I were kind of annoying. And I I liked history before, but like I wasn't too history was definitely boring to me. It was definitely a boring subject. I will do that. But when it does come to like royal stuff, like I'm interested just because I think it's interesting to learn about. So we've been watching yesterday actually we were watching a lot on just like the royal family and like how they're like where they're all buried and things like that, which is kind of like a little dark, but it's just like it's interesting just their culture that they have. Like it's just very like detailed and there's a reason behind everything, and it's just like it's just interesting. And then we also watch just like the history of different like religions and things like that, and it's just been kind of interesting just to learn how certain religions were started and just the different things that a lot of the religions believe in. And so obviously we're Christians and we'll stay that way. But it's just interesting to like learn about just the different religions and things like that. And just what the differences that there are in between it. But yeah, we learn a lot about that. So that's kind of how I've been fighting against the Sunday scaries. Is just kind of like getting into almost the depths of like seminary on YouTube. But so that's been fun. And yeah, we recently watched a video where, we were just watching like all the places that Jesus walked and things like that. And it was like, dang, like they walked a lot. And so that was just interesting. But the next thing I've been instructed to watch is The Chosen, and I haven't watched that, but I've heard it's very good. So I'll definitely have to watch that for sure. But yeah, we've kind of just been like YouTube junkies lately of just like watching just random fact videos, which is his thing, but somehow it's clogged up my YouTube algorithm, And I told him last night when we were watching the video, I was like, okay, we have to stop because my algorithm is messing up now. And
You
it's
got to look at that on your account.
no, literally. And it's like all of this like Queen Elizabeth, Henry the Fourth, like content of like everything. And I'm like, and then it's like these profound, historic figures, and they bring them back to life using AI or whatever it is, which is kind of like creepy, but also cool at the same time. And so, like, all of those are clogging up my algorithm. So I had to like start searching the YouTube videos that I like to watch of like influencers and lifestyle vloggers that I like to follow. So that way it would like kick back into my algorithm. And I love watching like Homeworthy, where like people give tours of their homes and stuff like that. But yeah, so I had to like retrain my algorithm last night by like clicking on different videos and things like that, to make sure. But yeah, usually if we do like all that history stuff, I'm on his YouTube account because, and I literally told him, I'm like, can we watch it on your YouTube account? Because I've worked too hard to get my algorithm to pull up videos
The
that I
way I
actually
want
want to
it.
watch.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like, yeah, whatever. So yeah, but that's what we've been doing to fight against the Sunday scaries. That was a long explanation for nothing, but yeah, so that is what we have been doing to protect ourselves from the Sunday scaries. So hopefully we said something that'll at least help somebody out there. We will be back next week with our final part in the series and a little announcement from myself. And yeah, so we will see you next Sunday.